Disassembly of the high output quad 4 begins by disconnecting the negative battery cable. This must be done to prevent personal injury or damage to the engine's electronic equipment. Wait at least 30 seconds after turning the ignition off before disconnecting the battery. This allows the idle air motor to position itself for the next engine start. If this does not happen, the engine could be hard to start, and the idle speed will not be correct at startup. Now, drain the coolant at the radiator drain. The removal of the heater hose from the thermostat housing allows the cylinder block to drain faster. Remove the plastic cover and fasten a length of hose onto the coolant drain. This will facilitate drainage. Next, drain the engine oil. The first component to be removed is the ignition assembly cover. This is accomplished by removing one electrical connector and 4 bolts. In some cases, the spark plug connector assemblies will come off with the ignition assembly cover. Sometimes the boots will remain on the plugs. To remove these connector assemblies, use the spark plug connector assembly remover, Special Tool J36011. The required action with this tool is to pull and twist simultaneously. Engage only the hard plastic boot, not the silicone connector. Then, disconnect the windshield washer pump connector and remove the coolant recovery reservoir. The next procedure is the removal of the timing chain housing cover. To accomplish this, start with the serpentine belt. Rotate this tensioner counterclockwise by placing a 13mm wrench on the tensioner bolt to release tension from the belt. Due to the limited access in this area, a serpentine belt tensioner wrench is available. Carefully remove the belt from the pulley. Next, remove the upper timing chain housing cover fasteners. Raise the car next and remove the right front wheel and tire assembly. The right lower splash shield comes off next. Notice the harmonic balancer and timing chain housing cover marks. Misalignment of the marks scribed across the edge of the balancer indicates that the inertia ring has slipped on the hub. The marks on the timing chain housing cover have no service application. The next step is to remove the crankshaft harmonic balancer bolt. Hold the balancer using J38122 and remove the bolt. Then use a puller to remove the harmonic balancer. Remove the fasteners holding the engine lift hook. Now you can remove the remaining timing chain housing cover bolts and nuts. Take off the timing chain housing cover and its 2 gaskets. There is a crankshaft seal and an oil slinger to deflect oil from the seal. The crankshaft front oil seal is removed by driving it out the back of the cover. A new front seal is installed using J36010 from the back side of the cover. Notice the mark on the crankshaft sprocket and its corresponding mark on the block. Aligning these 2 marks places the number 1 cylinder at top dead center. Now the car must be raised again in order to remove the chain tensioner. Pry off the retainer and remove the spring. Make sure all the slack in the timing chain is above the tensioner assembly. The timing chain must be disengaged from the wear grooves in the tensioner shoe in order to remove the shoe. Release the retaining tab on the shoe while prying the shoe outward. Then remove the shoe. Remove the tensioner assembly retaining bolts and the tensioner. Caution! The tensioner assembly is spring-loaded and could fly apart, causing personal injury. Now, remove the timing chain tensioner shoe pivot stud. Grooves on the tensioner shoe do not mean the shoe must be replaced. The groove depth on new shoes will only increase until the chain rollers contact the shoe surface. Next, remove the chain guides and the chain itself. Do not rotate the camshafts or the crankshaft after the timing chain is removed, since this can damage the valves and pistons. If it is necessary to rotate the camshafts, place the crankshaft 1/4 turn from 0 degrees top dead center to prevent the valves from contacting the pistons. Notice the holes in the camshaft drive sprockets. There are corresponding holes in the chain housing. Again, these indexing holes will become important when the engine is reassembled. To remove the intake camshaft sprocket, hold it with tool J36013 and remove the sprocket bolt and washer. These dowels at the ends of the camshafts and their companion holes in the camshaft sprockets are required to accurately position the camshafts. Loosen the exhaust manifold to exhaust pipe spring-loaded attaching bolts. Separate the exhaust pipe from the exhaust manifold. Then remove the 2 bolts on the brace at the oil pan and the bolt on the manifold. The exhaust pipe can now be lowered for clearance. The next step is to unfasten the retainers holding the exhaust manifold in place. Then remove the exhaust manifold and set it aside. Now it's necessary to disassemble the water pump in order to clear the radiator outlet tube with the pump cover. If the pump is not disassembled, it is possible to force the pump onto the tube, which could damage it or the pump cover. To remove the water pump, remove the 2 fasteners holding the outlet tube. Next, remove the 2 bolts from the cylinder block. Then remove the 5 bolts holding the cover to the pump body. Remove the pump cover. Next, remove the 3 nuts from the studs on the timing chain housing. Then remove the pump body. It is not necessary to remove the water pump in order to disengage the timing chain housing. Simply unfasten the pump from the studs on the back of the chain housing. If the timing chain housing is being replaced with a new housing, or if the engine block is being replaced, then the water pump must be disassembled completely and reinstalled. Water pump installation procedures will be detailed later in this program. To gain access to the camshaft carrier covers or cylinder head, it is necessary to loosen and move the timing chain housing. To do this, remove the fasteners holding the housing to the block and camshaft housings. Then, remove the 4 bolts holding the oil pan to the housing. Remove the stud from the housing just above the harmonic balancer. The housing can now be moved out of the way. Refer to the booklet that accompanies this video for the instructions to remove the timing chain housing from the vehicle. There are 2 aluminum and silicone camshaft housing gaskets and another gasket between the housing and the block. Notice the timing chain idler bearing, which is part of the water pump drive assembly. The tool kit to perform service on this bearing is J36998. The kit consists of a press plate, handle, driver, and support. To perform service on this bearing, remove the 2 snap rings from the water pump side of the timing chain housing. Install the press plate on the front side of the chain housing. Press the sprocket out of the bearing using the handle. Move the press plate to the rear of the timing chain housing and index it over the water pump studs. Using this assembly, press the bearing out of the timing chain housing. If the bearing is removed for any reason, it must be replaced because pressing on the inner race may cause damage.